What will you learn in this class? Altogether, there are 5 modules, and as I mentioned in the previous video, they will together focus on the nature of scientific data, how to interpret imperfect studies, especially through the distorted lens of the media, and how to make informed and smart decisions on the basis of these data, so that your parenting behaviors conform to your values and have the kinds of consequences that you intend. The remainder of this first module will focus on 3 main questions. These are as follows. First, the famous nature-nurture distinction, where it comes from and why it matters. Second, we'll talk about why it's so hard to pull apart effects of nature and nurture, and how most studies of parenting describe correlational data. We'll talk in depth about the problem of understanding correlational data and telling apart correlation from causation. Third, I'll tell you about a subfield of parenting research called behavior genetics, which has given us some truly surprising insights into the effect that parents have on a wide range of childhood outcomes, including things like verbal ability, personality, problems with alcohol, and even things like religiosity and the likelihood of future divorce. These studies suggest that genetics may play a much larger role than previously supposed, and also that parents have less control on fundamental aspects of their child's development than they may have suspected. The first module will give us the tools to understand research on a variety of topics, but also point to those areas where parents are unlikely to have much effect relative to areas where they can. Modules 2, 3, 4, and 5 examine research on these different topics and what we know. Module 2 focuses on the nature of learning in early childhood and how learning of things like language, reading, and number concepts is affected by preschool, screen time, and music training, as well as bilingualism. Here there are lots of important decisions to make and lots of new science to figure out. Module 3 explores moral development and why kids sometimes act badly even when they seem to know what's right. As part of this, we'll discuss the development of so-called empathy, lying, and self-control, and how basic changes in brain structure affect children's ability to act in accordance with what they value and what they know is right. We'll also talk about how impulse control is related to later life outcomes like happiness, income, and divorce, as well as criminality, and how we may be able to help foster self-control in children. Module 3 will also explore how moral development is related to religion and family structure, being raised by single parents or by same-sex parents. Module 4 will dive into physical and psychological health. We'll talk about the fiery debate regarding the causes of autism and also give you state-of-the-art evidence on what we currently know, evidence that you may have never heard before and that is likely to surprise you. As part of this, we'll talk about vaccination and what it is, how it works, and why we're sometimes distrustful of it. We'll talk about sleep, whether to co-sleep, and if it has long-term benefits, or whether we're better off letting infants cry it out in their cribs alone. We'll talk about sudden infant death syndrome, a leading cause of death in young infants, and how to easily reduce an infant's risk of dying in the night. Finally, Module 4 will discuss our current understanding of diet, touching on when to introduce foods, whether alternative diets are known to have negative effects, and also why so many kids seem to be allergic to foods these days, like peanuts. In the 5th and final module, we'll return to the topic of learning, now with a focus on school-aged kids. We'll talk about the achievement gap between different groups in the US and internationally, and also controversial questions like whether there are gender differences in math and science, and whether there's such a thing as different learning styles. Finally, we'll talk about different ways of adapting school to individual children's needs, including discussions of academic acceleration and also homeschooling.